All right, guys, this man is kind enough to join us after 1:30 in the morning from Yas Island. You know him from his amazing coverage with MMA Junkie, the first question every press conference, and the last beer at any bar, although he tells us he hasn't had any beer tonight, which is kind of disappointing. One of the good friends of the program. Get ready for a good time. John Morgan, welcome back to Submission Radio, man. Thank you so much for staying up to join us. Really appreciate it, dude.
Yeah. And to clarify, I didn't say that I hadn't had any beer. I just said that I was a little more sober than you probably expected at this time of the night.
Okay, good. We'll take it. As long as John Morgan wets his whistle just a little bit, we're happy campers. My phone going off with the Google Help support thing. What is it about John Morgan drinking beer that makes my phone go off like that? Anyway, before we get into this whole Conor McGregor situation, we got to ask you, John, obviously your second time on Fight Island, Yas Island. Big event just happening this past weekend with Israel Adesanya and Paulo Costa. How is it so far? Any differences between the first time on Yas Island?
It's just, I think everybody's just a little bit more comfortable with the routines. I mean, everybody's done it. It felt like kind of people were kind of really on edge last time and things would change and you weren't really sure what was happening. And not that the UFC didn't do their best job to communicate everything, but it was just, man, it was the first time, right? So everybody's trying to figure out how this thing works. What is the system like? How do you do your tests? This time I feel like it's down. I mean, everybody figured it out over the first 3 weeks and now we're packed in for 5 weeks straight. And so it just feels a lot more comfortable, and I think everybody's got the routine and the rotation down. So I think it just feels like a little bit like everybody's less on edge about things. It's like, okay, look, we know how this thing works. We know that the system in place is effective and is efficient. And as long as everybody follows the rules, we're going to be safe and everybody's going to be good and we're going to be able to host these events. So I would say just a lot more comfortable. But similarities are tough, man. I mean, like I said, it's, kind of making jokes about what time it is or whatever. But I'll be honest, man, sleep is hard to come by here, man. And I know it's kind of come out since Paulo Costa. I know he's not trying to make excuses, but some people around him have said, man, he wasn't sleeping really all that well. If you'll notice some of our pre-fight coverage, especially the interview with like Dominic Reyes we had, he was literally yawning as we were doing media sessions and stuff. And so it's really funny because the first time we came over here, our biggest concern was, are these athletes going to be okay, with the temperature and the heat and the humidity and all that? And it turns out that the arena is actually really cool. It's cold almost. You'll notice if you see me there, I've got a jacket on most of the time. It's that chilly in there. So temperature isn't a problem inside the arena, but what is getting sleep and making sure that your schedule is good, because it just seems really, really hard to kind of get your routine down and to figure out how to stay awake at night and sleep during the day. So, I mean, I think that's the biggest key. I mean, of course, X's and O's in the cage, fights are fights. But if you're looking for an intangible, I keep saying, man, it's figuring out if it's the fighter that you're cheering for or wanting to bet on or watching is getting the proper sleep, because that's the biggest challenge here.
Dude, that's hilarious because, I guess that is the new metric to go by. It's like, all right, well, this guy's the better grappler, he's the better striker, and he's got the better record. But this other guy can just sleep at a pin of a dime, So I'm going to pick the other guy because this guy's going to be rested. And it's funny because even here in Australia, when they do the fights, it's kind of early in the morning, and some of the prelim fighters have to fight at like 7, 8, or whatever, like 9 a.m. And they used to complain to us about, hey, like we felt off doing that. So I couldn't imagine fighting at like 4 in the morning. It's got to be a really big tangible that a lot of fighters weren't really expecting. But let's talk about the big news, man, because Conor McGregor and Dustin Poirier, this news came out where Conor sort of approached Dustin on Twitter about an exhibition charity fight. And I want to get your first reaction. When you first saw this and you woke up and you saw the amount of detail Conor had in these tweets, it's not the usual sort of cryptic stuff that he would put up. This stuff had everything in it, basically almost down to a T. What was your reaction?
A little bit surprised because I just don't see any way it could ever happen. So because of that, I wonder why you put so much interest in the detail. I mean, you're right. It was like, man, he's got this whole thing planned out. But the only problem is, even if it's an exhibition bout, even if it's a charity contest, you still got to have the UFC sign off on it. It's not like there's some kind of clause that, as long as it's for charity or as long as there's not money involved or whatever. No, it's still promotional rights. You know what I mean? I guess, I don't know if you found some way to call it a sparring session or something like that, then I guess maybe you could figure out a way around it. But come on, man. You're telling me the UFC isn't going to try to hold you up in court for that if they hear you're doing anything like that, trying to promote it as even like a smoker or something like that. Like, they hold your promotional rights. And so I was a little bit surprised by the whole thing. I appreciate the ambition. I appreciate the creativity. And I appreciate what Conor is trying to do, and he's trying to move things forward and push the UFC's hand a little bit. But I think he's backing himself into a corner here a little bit because I don't think there's I just don't see any way he could get away with it without the UFC signing off on it. So, man, it's frustrating too, because obviously, I mean, you know what this is all stemming from, the frustration between him willing to, trying to get a fight booked in the UFC, not really having the proper plans available for him. And then now you got, leaked direct messages and man code stuff being talked about in press conferences. And, it's a very public kind of, battle between the UFC and Conor McGregor. Which, hey, we're used to. I mean, it's not like Conor McGregor's not used to, kind of taking these tactics. But I just hope that hopefully sooner rather than later they can all get together in a room and figure it out. Because, I mean, we all want to see Conor McGregor fight. Everybody does. I would prefer to see it in mixed martial arts over boxing, if I'm being 100% honest with you. But, these guys gotta all get on the same terms, and it's challenging, right? Because by all accounts, Conor McGregor's financial success has made it so that he doesn't need to fight ever again if he doesn't want to. So if he doesn't like the terms, he can walk away. And at the same time, the UFC has proven that, yes, Conor McGregor, even if you are the biggest star in the history of the company, if you're not going to play by our terms, we're just going to have to move on with other parties.
Just on those leaked texts, John, I wonder, I know you sort of asked Dana White the question about it, and he spoke to you at the post-fight press conference. I am curious what you think about it. Dana White was saying, it's one of the dirtiest things you can do. And it's interesting because there's this narrative of the UFC very often insinuating or flat out saying that fighter X just didn't want to fight or turned down a fight. And it's kind of like a he said, she said situation. You don't really know who's telling the truth. In this case, Conor just laid it out. I mean, he's got the receipts. Maybe that's one of the downsides of having something in writing that you can screenshot it. Do you think it was a dirty move? Do you think it was a bad move? Or do you think it's a case where, finally a fighter actually showed, hey, I was willing to fight this or do this, and here's the proof of it?
Yeah, I think that it's a little bit of both, right? On the one hand, Dana White often does very much say, like he did at Dustin Poirier recently, right? So Dustin Poirier just doesn't want to fight. Well, it's accurate to a point. He doesn't want to fight for his contracted amount of money. He wanted more money. And from what I was told, it was pretty significant, the amount of increase he was asking for. It wasn't a little bit. It was a lot. And it wasn't really within the UFC's budget for that fight. But to say that he doesn't want to fight, yeah, you're taking a little bit of liberty there. Now, he never said Dustin Poirier is scared to fight or, Dustin Poirier is afraid of this matchup. He just said he doesn't want to fight. Well, that's not exactly true. He doesn't want to fight for that amount of money. So, as a fighter, you really have very little you can do other than, as you said, show the receipts, show exactly what was said. The problem is again, when you're having these messages that you assume are private at the time, I mean, how many of us haven't said something someday or written something that we're like, oh my God, I didn't even mean that, and you think about here, like Diego Sanchez got caught in the crossfire a little bit. You know what I mean? Dana White has a ton of respect for Diego Sanchez, but when Conor had called him out, or not really called him out, but said that would be a fight that he'd be interested in, you saw Dana saying, oh, listen, man, we should lose our promoter's license if we try to put that together. I think those are the little parts that you kind of forget about when you think it's a private conversation that's not going anywhere, that all of a sudden it gets put on the internet and you go, oh, dude, Jesus, I didn't mean to disrespect him like that. So, I understand both parties' perspectives. I don't think either one's 100% right or 100% wrong. I guess just another reminder, don't write anything in any form or fashion whatsoever that you aren't comfortable with other people seeing. I guess, that's probably a lesson for everybody, a reminder to everybody.
The John Morgan texts.
Get you something you can delete from end-to-end encryption, baby. You know what I'm saying? Like, you got to be careful with stuff. So, listen, neither one of them is 100% right. Neither one's 100% wrong.
Keep it old school, man. Just make phone calls. Actually, you can document phone calls. So just kill them afterwards. That's the best way. What I was going to say is it's funny seeing Conor and Dustin sort of team up, because Conor obviously wasn't happy. He wanted Gaethje. He didn't get that fight, and he's not happy with the UFC. Dustin didn't get the pay rise, so he's not happy with the UFC, and it's one of those, like, what is it? The enemy of, I don't know what that analogy is, but you know the one. Enemy versus enemy is a friend of mine, whatever. You've got the pieces, put it together, do something with it. But what I'm saying is, what do you think is sort of the ultimate goal here? Conor's doing this. It's getting ground. Everyone's talking about it. Doesn't seem like it's likely to happen and actually come together. So what's the ultimate goal here? Is it a hope that the UFC goes, that there's enough interest between this Conor-Dustin fight that the UFC just goes, all right, you know what, screw it. Let's just make that fight. Let's just put it together. What's the goal here?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think Conor understands the power of his stardom, which is get public interest behind you, right? I think that's why he does, as you said, the detail in there, the thought process is in there, everything that's in there. It's smart, right? Because you get this groundswell of interest. I mean, hell, let's be honest. When he started talking about Mayweather way back in the day, I was like, come on, this is never going to happen. And then all of a sudden, everybody kept talking about it, and the fight ends up coming together. Now, unfortunately, I think he's played that card a few too many times over the past few years since. This is not a situation where, Sports Center is talking about it every time he says something, and mainstream media outlets are picking up on it. So I don't know that can happen, but it doesn't hurt to get public interest behind it, because if then all of a sudden, the fans are chirping at Dana White and chirping at the UFC and saying, man, we want to see our guy fight. He's telling us he's ready to fight. What are you doing that you're not booking him? You need to get him a fight. It helps. Now, at the end of the day, Dana White, I don't think a lot of times cares too much what people say about him, so he just can blow it off and be like, I don't care. This is what we're doing. But I think it's good. He's just trying to get things moving in his direction. He's trying to use the public to help get things going in that direction. It sounds like from their point of view, in the McGregor camp, that they believe the Pacquiao fight is a real thing. I'm just going to be honest. I have zero interest in that fight whatsoever. I understand that it would be a big moneymaker, I assume, for him, for McGregor, and if that's in his best interest, I can't deny him that opportunity to make as much money as possible for him and his family. But I'm just not particularly interested in seeing it. So I'm hoping. And even if it's Poirier, I hope it's not a boxing match, man. I don't want to see a boxing match between these guys. I want to see the Poirier fight. I think it's a great time for the Poirier rematch. They have the history, of course. It's several years back. Now it would be in the lightweight division. I think it would be a phenomenal fight with some great storylines attached to it. So I'm hoping that what we end up with here is a mixed martial arts contest between Conor McGregor and Dustin Poirier. But I guess we're just gonna have to see how this stuff all plays out.
The enemy of my enemy is my friend. There, nailed it.
You were right. I knew where you were going with it.
It's pretty much the same thing I was going to say. John, with the whole situation, though, you mentioned Pacquiao and you mentioned, how you don't really want to see it. And I think most fans are on board there as well. I'm just curious, in general, people were looking at these texts and Conor McGregor sort of saying, hey, he was held back for an alternate and he attempted to fight a number of times. He wanted to fight in May. He wanted to fight in August. Ultimately, why do you think the UFC didn't just book him and put him in there? You have a huge name in Conor McGregor, a guy that wants to stay active. And yeah, maybe you take a hit on the pocketbook here and there, but surely it's worth the investment. Break it down for us. What do you think if Conor McGregor, especially with Conor dictates a lot of the terms that he's, have happened in the past. I mean, he even fought Floyd Mayweather. So why hasn't he been able to return if he was so adamant about returning?
I do think with Conor McGregor, you do have to understand that the financials behind it. When you say you take a little hit in the pocketbook, Conor McGregor makes a lot of money, and it's a lot more than what we see on the the public pay sheets. And now, hell, those aren't even public anymore, so we don't even get to see them. But I'm telling you, the money that he makes is significantly more than what we've read in the little salary reports that come out. And so it's a real investment in the UFC's wages to get him to fight, and so you have to be careful with it. You got to plan everything right. You got to make sure you can capitalize on a big market. You saw in the Dana White text, he's like, we just got these small markets. Of course, you need a Madison Square Garden where you can charge these exorbitant ticket fees and people are understanding of them. You need a big arena. You need the timing to be right. You need to make sure you're not going against certain other events, that sort of thing. So there's a lot of things that go into making a Conor McGregor fight. It's not like you're just booking number 10 against number 15 where you can put that on any Saturday night. I just throw it on one of those shows at the Apex. And I realize this was pre-pandemic, but even still, it's even more amplified now. Again, you can't just throw it on we'll just some random Saturday night show, UFC Vegas 11 or whatever the case is. You can't do that. It's more complicated. And I guess I wouldn't necessarily call it a drawback, but that's just a reality of the level that Conor McGregor is at, man. When you're that big of a star, commanding that big of an income, it just things have to be done right and they have to be worked out. It's a lot more complicated. There's a lot more moving pieces than, like I said, if you're just some Joe Blow that's 3 or 4 fights in your UFC career and they can book you whenever.
I'm also kind of fascinated because I know we all saw that Conor McGregor said he wants to have an active season. But I didn't think he kind of meant, hey, I'm just going to, I might even just fight Diego Sanchez here. And then I thought it was going to be like, all right, this is a warm-up with Cowboy. And my active season's going to be like Gaethje, Khabib, blah, 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 Nate, But I think he kind of meant, I just want to stay active. just throw anyone at me. I just want to come out there and stay warm. Give me warm bodies, which I found fascinating. But we've seen these kind of rivalries between Dana White and Tito Ortiz, Dana White and Randy Couture. How bad do you think this could get, though, if it gets to that level with a guy like Conor McGregor, who is a much bigger star than those guys, and more importantly, has the bankroll to kind of push it pretty far if he really wants to?
It could get bad. It could very much get bad. You're talking about two guys who have FU money, right? You know what I mean? So there's two guys that don't have to fold, and that's interesting. You mentioned those other fighters. They didn't have FU money. They had good money, but at the end of the day, they realized, like, man, if I keep doing this fight, like, I'll never fight again. Is that really what I want? And I think Conor probably doesn't want that. I think Conor wants to fight again, not because he needs the money, but just because he wants to continue to build his legacy. He enjoys the competition. As he said, he wants to, he has that burning desire to prove his greatness of all time. So I do think that he doesn't feel like there's just, an unlimited amount of time on the clock to work on this. But in terms of financial resources, from all indications, he doesn't ever need to fight again and can sit there and battle Dana White all he wants. But that's why I say, man, I really hope that these two guys can just get into a room together. As you said, you mentioned those names, Tito Ortiz. I mean, think about the things that Tito would say about Dana and the shirts he would wear about Dana, like literally in his presence, and they still found a way to work together. They still found a way to get things done. And I think if they can get into a room together, they can. But, it's when, we're communicating through our people, and then my guy's talking to your guy and conveying this message, and man, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. And I think, right now, Dana, of course, is focused on everything that's going on here at Fight Island, and obviously the big pay-per-view coming up to end this run, and all that other stuff, and keeping everybody safe, and then what's going on back in Vegas and getting started again. I mean, there's fights every Saturday night until Christmas, I believe, is how the schedule is working out. So, I mean, there's a lot going on. So it's tough, but I hope they can get into a room. I think if they get in a room together, they can work it out. But how bad could it get? It could get really, really bad, because if both these guys decide they're not going to budge, neither one of them has to listen to the other. Neither one of them has to fold for the other, and it could get nasty. I just don't think it will. I think at some point they'll get together and they'll figure it out and they'll make it happen.
What do you think likeliness is that Conor even fights this year? Let's say they do get in a room, they do hash things out. The pandemic is still very much here, and I guess we're going to need those fans back to sort of make that, gate revenue. What do you think the chances are that we even see Conor fight this year, whether it's Pacquiao or Poirier or someone else?
I'm not liking the odds, to be honest with you, man. I mean, I think here's what kind of sucks, really, and is the reality is that as far as the UFC is concerned, the Pacquiao fight's probably the easiest one, right? You know what I mean? They would probably, I imagine, get a little share of that revenue, and of course they'd help with the promotion a little bit. But the entirety of the thing wouldn't fall on them; it would fall on somebody else. And if it is true that the fight would happen in the Middle East, I know that Ali Abdelaziz and that camp have come out and said, "Oh, that'll never happen." They don't want to do business with you. But I can tell you, man, I mean, no secret, there's a lot of money over here, and there's a lot of money that people can spend pretty freely, because they want to kind of build the reputation of their nation and show, what a great economy they have and what a great land they are. And so it could happen. And I think that would honestly financially probably be the safest play for the UFC. But then again, I'm telling you, like, as you said, I mean, there's enough casual fans out there that would pay. There's no question about it. Like, I'm not saying it would be a financial disaster. Quite the opposite. I'm sure it would be a huge success. But man, I have yet to find one like real MMA fan that says, "Oh, hell yes, get me that fight, McGregor, Pacquiao all day, baby." I don't think that's what any of us want to see. So, but I guess if it's not financially possible at all for McGregor to fight in MMA, I guess it would be the best alternative. At least we get to see him do something, competing, being in action. This guy that we enjoy, being entertained by. But I'll be honest right now, and especially as the window starts to close, because again, we talk about all the financial realities and the moving parts and all those things, the pandemic being, chief among them. And Dana has said pretty clearly, I don't want to go back to a 25%, full arena. I want to go back to a full arena. So he's not going to do any of these like partial arena shows. But you just start running out of time. I don't think a Conor McGregor fight is a fight that you want to put together on 3 weeks, let's say. I mean, let's say Poirier and Conor both train and they say, they stay in the gym the whole time. They're in peak condition, and 3 weeks out from a proposed date, they're both weighing 162 pounds. You know what I mean? They're right there. still doesn't allow time for the media tour that you'd want, the press conferences, the calls, the videos, you'd want all those things. So I think the window's closing. So I think if something doesn't get done pretty soon, then we start talking about 2021.
Yeah, just one more thing on the Pacquiao fight. I guess what was interesting is that Dana White obviously downplayed it at the post-fight press conference as if he didn't really know anything about it. But then Conor said, there are legal letters to show otherwise, as if Dana's been involved in some kind of negotiations or the talks. What did you sort of make of that? Which would also make it interesting because let's say hypothetically this Pacquiao fight was in negotiations on the way to happening, for Conor to all of a sudden just to say, oh, now it's going to be Dustin Poirier and sort of pump fake and pivot, would either show less validity to the Pacquiao fight or to the Poirier fight.
I mean, Dana could have just forgot. You know what I mean? He's involved in so many discussions on a daily basis. I mean, I remember we were talking about McGregor and somebody. But,
Manny Pacquiao. I thought you were talking about Dave Pacquiao around the corner.
You're talking about the game Pac-Man, not the part of Pac-Man.
Now I remember, absolutely. Now I remember. So yeah, no, listen. Do I believe that Dana has no idea, no recollection? I mean, I think in the same night we asked about John Jones. He's like, "Oh, yeah, you guys know as much as I do with John Jones." I'm like, "Nah, I don't think that's probably true, Dana, but okay." So listen, that's Dana being a promoter. And also, it's funny because on the one hand, sometimes you got to give him a little bit of a pass in terms of he's not going to tell you everything. He doesn't have to tell you everything. If Conor wanted to produce the legal letters, I'm sure he could, but then Dana could just come back and say, well, yeah, my name was on them because of our legal team was dealing with it, and I'm the representative of this company, but I wasn't personally involved in the conversations. So, there would always be somewhere in between. But for 1 second, do I think that Dana was like, what? Pacquiao? I hadn't heard of such a thing. This is an interesting topic. No, absolutely not. I'm sure he was aware of at least some preliminary discussions.
But and just to follow, but I mean more from Conor's perspective. Like, if you are in fact in legal talks to fight Pacquiao, I don't think you can just change course and be like, you know what, I'm just fighting Poirier now. Pacquiao will be sitting there going, I thought we were fighting. What's going on here?
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. That's a fair point as well, right? If you've got legal documents saying that we're going to contract the fight now, so absolutely. And again, that's the other thing. To me, the Poirier thing from the beginning, as soon as it came out, I was like, okay, that's cute, but come on, this is never going to happen. But I get it. He's just, again, he's only got, so many cards he can play because I think, the legal backing of the contracts is very much on the UFC side. So, all Conor can really do is kind of play that public sentiment, play that public pressure, obviously use his huge social media following, his stardom to impact the negotiations. And so that's, I understand he's doing what he's got to do. And for Poirier, does it hurt to play along with the ride a little bit? Do I think Poirier is really sitting at home in Louisiana right now going, boy, I can't wait for this charity boxing match. Looks like it's all clear. We're going to get this done. Like, no, I'm sure Poirier gets a little bit, hey, let's ride this thing out and play the game a little bit and see where it goes. I don't think either one of them really believe this charity boxing match is going to come to fruition.
I just hope at the end of the day, some of these charities actually make some money because I feel bad for some of these charities. Like Dustin Poirier's one that's like, hey, wait a minute, we're going to get $500,000 and possibly more. And then it's like, sorry, guys, this was all a ploy to stay in the headlines. And because I wanted to ask you this, John, I mean, we did notice that obviously Israel Adesanya's stare down did so well and the event was trending to be so big. And it kind of feels like Conor McGregor stole a little bit of those headlines with his Pac-Man headline during fight week and kind of stole some of those. And now as people are celebrating Israel Adesanya as he sort of put on an amazing performance, he drops this other doozy on the fans and the attention is back on him with his Dustin Poirier fight. And we know that Israel is signed to Paradigm and, they're friends and everything like that. But do you think there's a slight little chance that a part of Conor McGregor isn't happy that Israel is getting this level of attention and becoming this level of a star and actually starting to break some of those records?
I mean, is Conor happy for Israel? I mean, I think Conor wants to be the big star in the sport. I mean, as you said, they share a management team, and so I guess that's good, to keep bringing attention to that group of athletes and that sort of thing. But, listen, I've seen Conor start to get a little bit of backlash. I've seen fans, like, oh, why does he have to try to steal the attention? Why does he have to try to steal the spotlight? Why can't he let, Israel Adesanya just have his night or whatever? But listen, man, that's not Conor McGregor's position to do. Conor McGregor, yes, they may share a management team, but man, he's out for number one. I mean, that's the position he wants to be in. So, he's going to take every opportunity to claim the spotlight that he can, and that's what he's done throughout his career, and he's been a master at it. I mean, he has commandeered himself into being the biggest star in the history of the sport without fail. So, it's not his responsibility to make sure that the people love Israel Adesanya, which, by the way, Izzy had just a phenomenal performance, and it is cool to see his star continue to grow. But, I see people criticize Conor for, don't try to steal the spotlight. Like, bro, steal the spotlight. That's, you know what I mean? You're on this thing for so long. You got to do what you got to do to move yourself number one. I get it.
Just quickly, and we'll let you go in a sec, John. What do you think of this kind of aftermath of UFC 253 with Adesanya? It's like a complex narrative, right? On one hand, he got this incredible win over Paulo Costa. On the other hand, a lot of people were sort of, I guess, somewhat outraged by the post-fight antics where he was sort of humping Paulo Costa, which I feel like, dude, it's not like he's soccer kicking him in the head. It was very kind of, quick, whatever. I think Brian Campbell on Morning Combat put it well. He's like the Stone Cold Steve Austin. He's like a kind of anti-hero. He kind of does what he wants, and I don't think it was really that egregious, but people are kind of blowing up about it, and I like that he's just kind of steering into it, and he's retweeting stuff, and he's just kind of like, look, whatever, that's my celebration. I'm not going to be apologetic about it. And then you've got also this whole, Gynogate thing that's blown up, and everybody's kind of, latching onto this. So it's an interesting one. On one hand, it's not as clear cut as just like amazing performance, that's it. It's a complex narrative. What do you make of it, John?
Yeah, a lot of stuff going on, right? So it's kind of cool. A little earlier today, we actually got a chance to sit down with some of the UFC broadcasters and fighters, including Paul Felder, Dan Hardy, Angela Hill. And so we actually asked them, it was the media that was all here. So I actually asked each of them their opinion on what they thought we saw in the fight itself. Did we see a phenomenal Israel Adesanya performance, or did Paulo Costa have a bad night, bad execution, bad game plan, that sort of thing? Jose Youngs from MMA Fighting actually asked for their take on the whole dry humping situation, and so it was interesting to discuss the fallout and to see what people thought about it. And for their part, mostly, and you can see the video on MMA Junkie if you want to check it out. We kind of cut all their answers together. But I think most of their reaction to the dry humping thing, for instance, was kind of what I thought. It was like, basically what they all said was like, was it polite? Was it appropriate? Was it respectful? Was it something that you would expect to see in every fight? No, it wasn't. But at the same time, I mean, this was such a contentious buildup. You know what I mean? You talk about the tension between these, and it's not exactly like Paulo has been like 100% polite all the way on the ride up to this thing, and then you just think, wow, where is this animosity from Israel coming from? I don't get it. Listen, it was a heat of the moment type thing, and it was, after a masterful performance in a very, very contentious kind of rivalry fight. And again, as they said, I mean, you're telling me if Paulo Costa didn't knock him out in the first round, he wouldn't have stand over his, limp body and taunted them in some way. I mean, I'm sure he absolutely would. So, is it
and
the
they
greatest...
shook hands afterwards, after the humping. They shook hands.
And Israel initiated that, I believe, as well.
He did. He did. He walked over to him and gave him some respect afterwards. So, yeah, is it his finest moment? No, but do I really have a problem with it? Like, no. I mean, what did you expect? You know what I mean? Like, he did. He cooled down rather quickly. And look, this was a heated rivalry battle of a guy that was supposedly going to leave him cold and twitching on the canvas. You don't think a little bit of a dry hump at the end just to show like, oh, who's the dominant one? I'm the dominant one. Like, how about that? I think it was Dan Hardy that even said, like, hey, man, his debut, he pissed on the cage. What do you think? Surprised. I was like, man.
Randy Couture spanked Tito Ortiz one time in the middle of a fight. It's 2020.
In the middle of a fight. Yeah. So, I mean, listen, if you're going to try to make a big deal out of that, come on and go somewhere with that. Now that, the other one you brought up there, the Gynogate, as you said, everybody's, pointing out this. It's a big discussion, man. Listen, I don't look at Israel Adesanya's body and think, man, that's a clear drug user. There's no question about it. You know what I mean? I don't. And I think, you have to trust in the USADA program to some degree. So, he was asked about it on Saturday night. He didn't really address it. I think the next time somebody gets in front of him, they're probably going to have to address the question a little bit more directly and let him answer it. He doesn't strike me as the guy that's a cheater, but crazier things have happened for sure. We've been surprised by other people. Sometimes we thought, man, not that one. So I would not pretend to be an expert. I've actually watched, some videos and tried to research it. I don't know a whole lot about like the hormonal balances of. I know it seems difficult if you're checking me out to think I don't probably take a lot of performance type things. You know what I mean? Where I'm focused on my, building this temple of my body. I'll be honest. I don't know much about it, but I've definitely seen the accusations out there. But what I do wonder. It does seem to be, he does seem to be growing into that market where he's got a lot of haters and a lot of people that want to see him fail. So I don't know if that's so much of people that are like, I'm onto something, or the people that just want to tear him down. So we'll see how he wants to address it moving forward.
And just on that, I mean, I just think, he's just doing a social media victory lap, and there's nothing wrong with it. Especially he kept so quiet leading into the fight. I think whoever wins it kind of has the right to be able to gloat a little bit. And we're talking about some of the worst ones, like the spanking. I think there was none worse than Dan Henderson after he laid that extra punch on Michael Bisping and then made that like a T-shirt logo and then wore that for the rest of his career. That one would have had to.
Or he could have jumped the cage and fought Dylan Dennis.
True. But to be fair, Dylan Dennis wasn't there, so we can't really discount that option. I was also just going to say, with the Gynogate, you're right, John. Like the experts, and if anybody watches it, it could be a number of things. It could be like literally a million things. The hormone imbalance is as far from just taking steroids. It could be due to medications. One of the experts said it could even be due to weight cutting. It could be due to things like moods and depression and all sorts of different things. So I know it's the thing that everybody wants to jump to as soon as they see it, because that is the common theme that we've seen throughout the sport. But also a guy like Israel Adesanya, who's fought so much and been in all these different sports and never been caught, I think it would be fair for people to also wait and see exactly what the deal is before they sort of start labeling it as steroids too. I think that's pretty crazy. But anyway, let's quickly talk about the fight this weekend, man, because I guess no one really is paying much attention to it. But just quickly, on Holly Holm coming back. And by the way, Carlos Condit is on this card as well. Just give us a brief preview. Carlos Condit's fighting Court McGee. Holly Holm is back as well against Aldana. Do you imagine if both of these sort of, I suppose, legends, definitely legends, lose on the card this weekend, we might see the end of two big legacies?
Yeah, I don't know. It's funny, just to point out real quick, too. I know you're right. It kind of sucks that people haven't really started focusing on it yet. Now, we will have Media Day later today, and we'll start talking to everybody, and you'll see a lot of the interviews come out and all that. But I will say, I think it's almost like refreshing to see how big the pay-per-view was that people were still talking about it a couple days later. You know what I mean? That shows it really is big. Sometimes we're so quick to move on, especially like you said, when there's a fight every Saturday. So I kind of like the fact that it's marinated a little bit and people are still talking about it for a couple days. But yes, now it's time to shift to this card. Listen, I mean, especially, Holly Holm, you look at some of the losses that she's taken, you go, oh, man, the record lately. But then you look at the names she's fighting. Jesus Christ, she's fighting literally killers every single time out there, and this is no different. Irene Aldana is such a fun fighter, right? I mean, that big knockout last time out. I mean, she's got incredible boxing, incredible striking. I feel like, if you're a hardcore fan of MMA, you probably watched Irene Aldana's rise and were excited about her. I know I was, for instance. Just her style is so fun to watch, but now it feels like she's really coming into her own. Her confidence is there, and her execution is there, and she's kind of rounding out the game a little bit. So, I think this is a big fight. It has some real title implications. Another women's fight, Jermaine Durandamy and Juliana Pena, has some real title implications as well. So a big moment. So Holly Holm, to me, it seems like, she's still very passionate. We were talking to Brendan Fitzgerald actually earlier today, and he was talking about his interview with her in a piece I think he said he did that's coming out later this week that really talks about her dedication to the sport, and that, yes, she realizes that she's got her critics and that sort of thing, but that she's still as passionate as ever, as fueled as ever, and still wants to be, fighting at a championship level. And that's why she's honestly always been willing to take on the best of the best of best. I mean, she only fights killers. She doesn't get a fight off, it seems. So a big night for her. Carlos Condit, I think, man, you wonder where he's at. You know what I mean? It's just the layoff and, some of the results he's gotten as of late. I mean, a true legend of the sport. So, I don't think he's fighting for reputation. I mean, I think Carlos Condit's reputation is set in stone. I think that man, is always going to be a fan favorite no matter what he does. But as far as where his relevance is in terms of contendership or what fights are available to him, we'll see, man. It's It's weird, right? It seems like the last couple of weeks we've been reaching this group of athletes where we're talking about them. Donald Cerrone, Diego Sanchez, Carlos Condit. These people that we've been watching fighting for a decade, and do they still have it? Yeah, they're absolutely fighting at a high level. And in fact, Dan Hardy was talking about this today. It's a shame because he kind of points to like making sure that guys like that are getting matched up with it, which I think this is a great matchup. Court McGee, another guy that's been around for a long time. It's not like some 25-year-old killer that you're trying to put over on somebody. So big stakes for both of those in terms of what their career maintains going forward. But both of them, Holly Holm, obviously her place in history is secure. You'll never forget that scene in Melbourne. For the end of time, man, that's an all-time classic moment. And Carlos Condit, man, much of the same in terms of the battles he's had. So interesting to see what comes out of both of them.
Yeah, I was thinking about this the other day, and we are definitely in an age right now that many fans haven't experienced. In the other sports, your NBAs, your MLBs, your NHLs, legends come and legends retire. But here, fans and all of us get so attached to these names, and they're so familiar that when it comes to this point of their career, when there are slight declines and you see these guys not being the fighters they once were, but also coming to a point where they've got to go across that crossroads, I think it's a little bit emotionally tough for all of us when we watch it. So it could be an emotionally sort of taxing night for a lot of fans this weekend. One legend, though, that isn't going anywhere. He might not be getting much sleep, but there he is, John Morgan at MMA Junkie. John, check out the Road Show. John, we appreciate you. Of course, check out MMA Junkie, all of the coverage. Can't wait to see what pops up next. Thank you so much for staying up and coming on to Submission Radio. Really appreciate it, man.
Always a pleasure, guys. There's literally nothing else to do here in Abu Dhabi. So
we're editing that part out.
You were busy. You squeezed us in.
Submission Radio is a great program. I love to be here with those guys. Great guys. Dennis and Costa, so smart. Thanks, John. Appreciate you having me on the show.
Thanks, John.